In Uganda with a major international organization called Plan International, and they're similar to Save the Children, where they do different support work for children in their environment. So if the child is destitute or an orphan or whatever, they help that child in their environment. So that could be anything from building a well in that child's community, helping assist with the roads there, or putting latrines in the new schools or building new schools. And part of their initiative in my particular district was to build a youth center, which is a really huge building with sports and computer education and other programming, as well as a health clinic that was there for the youth. And we worked at that particular center, as well as satellite centers where we provided some of the services as well as materials to those youth in the community. I was a health volunteer and sort of a youth health volunteer, depending on how it was worded. When you get there, you kind of do everything. So I taught computers at the center. I helped establish some systems and processes for the health clinics so that more youth were more comfortable coming for services, especially for adolescent reproductive health services. We did outreach to the schools to let the youth know in the schools that the services were there at this center. And then we also incorporated and began these different debate clubs in the schools that also kind of pushed the notion of the satellite, the youth center, for the kids to come there as well. So we did debates in the schools as well as at the youth center.
I mean, in terms of safety, I felt safer in my community in Mauritania than probably I ever have in the United States. People really take ownership of you as one of their own. Usually a family wants to give you their last name and often a new first name. They really want you to be part of the community. So in my experience, I never had any concerns about safety. In terms of kind of illnesses, if you think you're going to go to Peace Corps and not get sick, you're vastly mistaken. Everyone gets some kind of illness, whether it's from food or the water's not clean or just your body's adjusting to a whole new system, a whole new climate. You will get sick at some point, but for most people, I mean, Peace Corps, in my opinion, did a really good job of making sure that they got us healthy and really prepared us to go through some times where it was...
I forgot that you even have that or use that. So, but yeah, I think really people try to welcome you with open arms. They take care of you. They're interested in you. They want to share with you. So I think conditions really, you just need to learn to trust and be open to whatever is out there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what about cultural shock? I mean, I'm sure you experienced some cultural shocks when you were there, and I'm sure when you came back, you had a reverse cultural shock. Can you briefly, tell me about how was it?
Well, in my experience, I really found that the reverse culture shock coming back to the U.S. was so much more difficult to adapt to than the culture shock that you encounter when you arrive, because when you arrive, it's your life, and you adapt or you don't. And so when you show up at your host family's house and there's no electricity, there's no water in the house, there's no bathroom in the house, that's your reality immediately, and you either adapt or you don't. And I found that it was difficult to come home to the States, especially after living in Madagascar. I couldn't deal with the supermarket. That was just...
Because in Peace Corps, you go far away, like off the beaten path, oftentimes, or to places that, if you ask people, can you point that out on the map, they say no, and then you have to find it. But it's not really a travel program. It's a community-based experience, right? So I mean, you make a big trek, but then you're just there for a long time, and you move around and you kind of see. But it's not a travel experience. It's more like an experience of really being there, and being there in a place that oftentimes is very different culturally. So, but you have a long time for that to kind of become familiar, and for you to become really almost towards an insider of a community. So that's a slightly different question than like having the travel bug and stuff. It's like, the opportunity is to really be somewhere for long enough to where you kind of have a chance to comparatively learn a lot about your own cultural background and values, and to really deeply learn about one place, but that may not ever translate to anywhere else. Like the village where I live in Gabon isn't the same as any of these other places. But so yeah, I mean, that took me a long time to kind of let go and just adjust to kind of being there, because you find out that some of the skills that you need are like being able to be okay with being bored for like nothing happening for a long time, or being alone, not just culturally isolated, but like literally alone sometimes. And you didn't necessarily think those were going to be your skill sets or your and a lot comes out of that, right? You kind of tend to come out of that experience much more self-reliant and kind of industrious and thrifty. And return Peace Corps volunteers tend to say things like, I can do anything for a year, right? Where you might not have even thought that before. Like, you can be in a really challenging setting culturally or economically or anything. Like, I can kind of do anything for...
That's expired. I can eat that.
Right. Yeah, that's not bad yet. Those dates are just
They're just
guidelines.
arbitrary.
Right.
This one time.